Welcome to Lesson 6 of BibleTech 401, Advanced Tools for Studying and Teaching the Bible. Advanced technological tools, and I've been talking about Markdown. Now I want to talk about the main app I use for Markdown. I have used Ulysses for a good while. It's an excellent app. I have used something called Nota, but for my money, my discovery of an app called Obsidian has changed my Markdown life. Here is a standard Obsidian article. It uses all the Markdown features that I showed in previous videos. There, for example, are the heading tags, the two hashtags to show this is a heading 2. But when I'm not actually on that line, they disappear, making it just a little easier to read. That is a feature that goes back a number of years and is really essential. All of the main tags are invisible until you edit that particular line. That is true as well of bolds. And if there are any italics in here, this is how I slap information together inside an article. I get a structure going and then I just toss some stuff in and then I work through it. And like a lot of people, I discover what I think as I write. And that actually means for me that I have lots and lots of articles and YouTube scripts and even personal letters that are in various stages of completion, some of which will never be completed. And that's okay with me. They're still part of my searchable library of notes. And that means I have a lot of notes in here. Let me take you through the structure. And actually, one of the best things about Obsidian, aside from its extensibility, which we will also talk about, is that you can access the files that it is reading from Max Finder or certainly Windows Explorer, because I believe Obsidian is cross-platform. So using Raycast, I might just go to my Obsidian folder. I actually kind of have a couple of them and they're backed up. I'm trying to remember where I have this one. I think this is it. Okay, so if I show you my Mark Ward Vault, here are my folders. Why do I have an RTF file? Don't need that. All the files in here are MD, that is Markdown files. That's just a text format. So I could change it to TXT just fine. It would still be read by any app. And I assume Markdown could actually be read by TextEdit, for example. Yeah, it certainly can. Okay, I have an archive where I keep stuff that I just want to be searchable. But here are my main folders. I have all my articles. Attachments is all of the images that you drop into Obsidian. They're all kept here. And periodically I'll come through using an app called Permute. I will actually convert all the PNGs to WebP just to make them as small as possible so this attachments folder doesn't get too large. I have blog posts, which is a dying breed of articles. I have book notes, which I'll show you in a bit. I have book reviews I'm working on. I have books I'm working on. I have courses I'm working on. I have Kanban boards. I'm actually moving to just doing my writing Kanban board. I'll show you that too. I have personal letters, which I will skip. I have preaching and teaching opportunities, which I start with dates. And then I have YouTube scripts and tons of folders for those. I can move them around and in Finder, and instantly this will be reflected in Obsidian. Let me talk through some of the key tools in Obsidian that I use to make my reading and writing life better. So here is the set of notes I took on the disintegrating conscience of the modern West by one of my very favoritist authors, Stephen D. Smith. I used a regular expressions recipe in TextSoap to produce this document from the somewhat more, a less easy to read text that's supplied to me by the Kindle highlights. So I get a nice little page number and then a paragraph. And what I'll often do is I will go through here and I will add little equal signs around the paragraphs that I find interesting and want to use for a review or article that I might write. And I save those and they just stay in there and it's hard coded in. So if I move to a different app someday, which I doubt will happen anytime soon, this will probably last me years. Obsidian is really, really cool and used by a lot of people. Those highlights will still be present. I also use the highlights when I'm writing articles to highlight stuff that needs to be worked on still. All of my Bible notes that were originally in BibleWorks are actually now in an archive here. Let's see if I can find it. Come on, archive, BibleWorks note. And they're actually named by scripture reference. So I can search for them very easily because in Obsidian, you hit Command O. And if I just type, I think it was John. Is it John? Is it JOH 316? Oh, brother. Let's try ROM. ROM 1.18, and that'll take me right to my notes for that passage. And I saved those over many years. And I was pretty bummed when BibleWorks died, and I'm like, what am I gonna do with these notes? Well, they were RTF files, and so I was able to convert them using Pandoc to a Markdown format and stick them all in here so they're still accessible to me, and I do still occasionally use them. You can also search with Command-Shift-S all throughout your library, and that is a very useful tool as well. I have a number of plugins here in Obsidian that I find to be useful. There are core plugins, most of which I'm not using because I'm not using Obsidian in quite the way that most people do. They seem to use it as a database, a brain, and they like to make a lot of connections among documents. I actually don't. I like to use the classic folder structure, but some of the community plugins are really useful. I can type a Bible reference and it will spit out the Bible verse. I can type 2 hyphens and then a Bible reference, and then out will come a fully styled quotation from the ESV using that particular plugin. I can use a Kanban board. So let me show you what my Kanban boards look like. I have a Kanban board set up here that I can access through Raycast, and here are the scripts and articles I'm working on and book reviews. Then here are the ones that are ready to film. And once the articles get into editorial, I can drag them across and I'll know that that's where they are. If I click on one, I can go right to the note in Raycast. I love the Kanban board. That I use Trello for my design work, and I'm using the Kanban board in Obsidian through this great community plugin. I have Kindle highlights. I ended up turning that off because I like to do that manually. I prefer to do that manually. I have a minimal theme. I can type out dates in natural language. I have an Omni search. I am able to do a small amount of regular expressions, find and replace. And here's a key one. Okay, I can share notes. Oh, I just love this. So here's something I'm working on. I can copy shared link, and then in Google Chrome, I can paste that link, and this is what someone else sees. Exactly what I see. And it's at a public link. I can remove that if I want to, but it's just so awesome because I'm constantly wanting people to see what I'm working on, but I don't want to have to shift it into Google Docs unless it's something I want them to comment on, at which point, that's later in the editorial stage where there we go. I can update the document, make a change or something, and then I can send it up again and it'll be updated on the web. I can delete that shared link so that it's no longer available on the web. This is awesome. The real key with Obsidian is having everything in one searchable, backed up place. The second real key is that it's super lightweight. It's just a bunch of text files collected together. And therefore, not only can I manipulate those files, copy them, move them around, duplicate them, whatever it is, within macOS's Finder, I can even rename a bunch of them using a Finder renamer app that I have. But everything is fast, fast, fast because it's plain text. I hate the spinning beach ball. And in Word, I get the spinning beach ball. In Pages, I don't get the spinning beach ball, but I don't have a searchable library. It's not all together. I can't whip around to different things very fast. And then with Markdown, let me show you, not only can I grab all of my text and get it over real quick into Visual Studio Code, where I can easily run powerful regular expressions to fix it up and then get it right back over into Obsidian without having lost anything. But when I am done, I am able to export not only to PDF, but to all kinds of formats. So I can export to Markdown or to another form of Markdown or to HTML or to Word. I can export to OpenOffice and RTF and EPUB. This is massively helpful, and it means that I am independent of other word processing applications. Whatever somebody else needs, I can get it to them. For a little while, it was a little troubling to get stuff into Google Docs, but now within Google Docs, I have an extension that allows me to go not only from Docs to Markdown, which is helpful to get stuff into Obsidian, but Markdown to Docs. And if I go gdocify Markdown and I paste that whole Markdown document into it, I end up with nicely styled Google Doc text sitting nicely in my document. I have Raycast mapping Command F1, which is just one of the easiest things to do with your left hand, your thumb on Command and your middle finger on F1 to launch Obsidian, so I can get into it at any point. The one problem I have, and I mentioned this to people before in the course, is the Obsidian extension in Raycast is not working for me, and I simply cannot figure out how it is that I name the folder where Obsidian has got all its stuff, and it still doesn't actually find the vault. I don't know how to do that, and one of these days I'll figure it out, or somebody else will. That's the only thing left in my otherwise Obsidian-dominated life. Obsidian also has a nice app for iOS and for iPadOS, and I presume for Android, and I believe for Windows. So you are able to synchronize your documents. I go ahead and pay them $5 a month or so to do that. The Dropbox sync method wasn't working very well for me, and I live my entire life as a writer in Obsidian, so I'm happy to pay them a little money. I would really love to see more of my friends out there using Markdown and using Obsidian, which is the best app that I've found for working in Markdown. Let me end with an anecdote. Many years ago, my main mentor, Mark Minnick, we're talking quite a few years ago, because I was a freshman in college in 1997, and he taught a class that all the freshmen had to take called Principles of Christian Growth, and thousands of people took that class and benefited greatly. I certainly did. I still remember it. And how many classes do you remember from your undergrad days? That's how I ended up at his church and benefited so greatly from his ministry. He would buy a wide margin Bible, and in that wide margin Bible, he would place notes. Now, I don't have a wide margin Bible because I don't do that. But imagine this is a wide margin Bible. And imagine that whatever book I'm reading, in fact, I'm reading right now, Walking the Way of the Wise, A Biblical Theology of Wisdom by my friend Mitch Chase, who's a good writer and a good biblical theologian. Mitch Chase makes an insight on page 27. And let's imagine, because this was Pastor Minnick's system, that I've given a number to his book. So Mitch Chase's book is book number, 2171. And so I write 2171 in the beginning of the book. And then in my wide margin Bible, next to the passage on which Mitch Chase has provided an insight, I would write 2171 equals 27. So that is book number 2171, which in my files I can find is Mitchell Chase's book, has an insight on page 27 into the passage that's relevant. And Pastor Minnick said that there were times when people accused him of making stuff up because the illustration he used was just so perfect, but also so obscure. Like, how in the world did you find that in the comparatively brief time that you have every week to prepare sermons? And this was a time before computers were widely used for this sort of thing. We're talking in the 80s, he would have heard this. And he said, what people don't realize is he's been filing away sermon illustrations, diligently for years and using this system. Well, I quickly realized that system was not going to work for me, that I was going to be a digital guy. And that's how I use things like Obsidian and how I use Markdown. I don't seem to be able to save illustrations for very long. However, what I tend to do is use my most recent reading for anything that I'm working on. I have to have it filed, and that's why I read everything pretty much on Kindle and Logos, and then I harvest those highlights, which is easy to do on Kindle, pretty easy to do on Logos, and I stick them in Obsidian. And anytime I need to go recover what I learned from a given book, it's easily done because all of the highlights are there. I've taken a system that was presented to me by my major mentor, and I've put it into my digital life, and I commend this practice to you. I hope this was helpful to you. I'd really like to know if you use Markdown or Obsidian. Well, I guess you kind of have to use both if you're going to use Obsidian. Because of me, or in part because of me, I'd like to hear about it. I'd like to hear about your experience. God bless you.